I'm gonna go ahead and start the recording. It's starting to record. Go live is started. Ladies, enjoy yourselves.
Thank you, Wendell. All right, now I need to go on Facebook so I know what I'm doing. He said a minute. Oh, and plus, oh, we got the recording, so we'll know when the little live thing comes up. All right.
All right, I'm logging on right now to the computer. But I'm here. I can see and hear everything.
Okay. Thank you. See, we're recording, but we're not live yet. Oh, here we go. We live, baby. What's going on? And welcome everyone to another installment of She Saves the Day. I am your host, CC the Geek, on behalf of HBCU Con, and also want to personally thank the Visual Communication and Digital Media Arts program at Bowie State University, the Department of Fine and Performing Arts at Bowie State, for allowing us to be a part of your official Women's History Month program. So let's get right to it and introduce our hostesses. Well, not our hostesses, our panelists rather. And I guess we'll start in ABC order. I don't know. I'm like, cause I'm so used to calling y'all by your real names versus yours. But let's go. Love Usagi, let's start with you. And then we'll go Tranquil Ashes and Regine. And then I guess Erica and Tallin, they're jumping on any minute now. And God bless Tallin, you all. She's having some issues, so it's not by any, it's like totally an act of God, like not even in her control. So y'all just pray for her. But at either rate, go ahead, Love Usagi, take it away and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Love Usagi, and my real name, aka Natasha. So I am a quality assurance analyst in at a video game studio, and also like super geek into comic books, anime, video games, of course, and drawing. So I also do art, and I have gotten to do art for one of the projects we just finished up.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yay. All right, go for it, Tranquil.
Well, I'm Tranquil Ashes. I am a cosplayer, makeup artist, model, aspiring voice actress, and maybe a real actress one day. Have some things in the works. But yeah, I am a super nerd. I love everything fantasy, everything sci-fi, anime, comics, you name it. I'm probably into it, and I very much so love traveling. And I'm really sad I can't travel right now.
Facts. Regine, go ahead. You go ahead.
Hey y'all, hi, I'm Regine. I'm the owner and writer creator over at Lock It Down Productions. We produce a whole bunch of different types of comic books. I also do some freelance comic book writing for Wave Blue World, Marvel, DC Comics as well. And I'm also the coordinator and founder of the Women in Comics Collective International. I'm so happy to be here.
Yay, yay. Okay, cool. And Talon's going to be audio only today. Speaking of which, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Talon? Thank you for being here.
Hi. Uh, I'm laughing because this is the most awkward situation I've ever been in. I have a power outage going on. So I'm in my car, like with the 26% battery. It's terrible. So I'm Colin Kell, cosplayer, writer, essayist, which falls under writer. I have actually written my very first comic, which is being printed now. And I would not necessarily call myself a geek. I don't call myself a geek in any way, shape, form, or fashion, but I was very much into cosplay. So that kind of put me in the whole geek sphere. I do like science fiction and fantasy. It's not a hardcore interest. I have an interest in a lot of things, including social justice. And I would actually say my passion for that is way greater than my passion for anything geek.
That's fair. Here for it. And last but certainly not least, we have the Erica Hardison. Please introduce yourself, Miss.
Okay, so my name is Erica Hardison. I'm a journalist and I'm the publisher of Fabulous magazine. Fabulous is the first Black nerd magazine, is from the perspective of Black feminists. So I'm always writing content, producing content, moderating content. So I'm happy to be here, and happy Women's History Month.
Yay. Yes, you always doing stuff. All of you are always involved in stuff. And that's what I love about y'all. I mean, among many things, you all are just wonderful women. And I'm very, very proud to have you all here with us today. So let's get to our first question, which some of you all kind of delved into. And this is usually how I like to start a lot of my panels, which is, what is your passion? You all kind of answer the question of what is your niche. So we'll skip that. But how, let's talk a little bit more about the how in terms of how you found your place in this community or places in this community. Let's see. And how does that transcend to your place in the world? And how do areas such as the arts, so in terms of like the VCDMA program, they offer advertising design, animation, motion graphics, digital cinema, time-based media, digital media arts, fashion design, and they also have other specialized minors, including hip hop. And what else did I have here? Yeah, I think that was it. So yeah, how does your niche transcend to that, and then other places in the real world? Sorry, I forgot. Now I gotta like cue people. Let's start with Erica, since you went last, since you had to go last.
Okay, so for one, I already knew that I wanted to like produce a magazine. That wasn't, something I doubted. I've always wanted to be a magazine writer.
Uh-oh, you muted, girl.
Sorry.
I think
the turning point for me was like 2014. I did an issue and I re-imaged this model into Misty Knight. And like only like a small percentage of people knew what the image was. And like I had to always explain my covers. So I kind of got like really, I was really like insecure about it. I was like, don't nobody know who Misty Knight is. But lo and behold, a year or so later, the Marvel on Netflix started rolling out, and then Luke Cage started coming out. And so then it's like, I got this old ass issue from like 2014 that's like now super popular everywhere. So I just kind of like, mix the things that I love, the things that I'm passionate about, and I seek out entertainment.
Nice. Nice, nice, nice. Wonderful. Okay. I'm like, I don't know. Everybody's so interesting. It's like Russian roulette, but I can't lose. Love Usagi, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you found your place in the community, how it transcends, and then of course you were actually a part of the VCDMA program, one of the first, not to date ourselves, but among the first folks to like graduate in that program because it's a new program, right? So talk a little bit about your journey and your place in the and how you found your place in the world, so to speak.
Yeah, so I've been all over the place, and I grew up playing video games. I feel like I came out of the womb with a controller in my hand. Like it was something that we did for our family game nights and things like that. And I mean, I have been playing games for so long and drawing, being an artist, but it never occurred to me that I could do those things as a career. Like I'd begun to watch a lot of like documentaries, or anytime they would put out like how it's made videos on various games, I would always be like, man, that's so cool. Look at the way they get to work, look at the space they get to work in. And it still never dawned on me that it was something I could do. And so there were various things that I started off as a biology major when I went into college. And that was kind of like sort of a push from just my family and my father. And it was only until I sat down with a professor that was a math professor, and he was just like an artist as well. His office was just covered in drawings on the school's letterhead and memos. And he said that though he loves math so much, and I was very much into math and biology, I wanted to be like a veterinarian and marine biologist, I wanted to be an obstetrician. Like I was just like, whatever I can do in the sciences, I want to do it. Right. But during that conversation, he was like, he and his daughters and his wife, they sit down at the table and they talk math, but there's often times where he's wondered if the world is missing an artist. And so that kind of inspired me to like switch majors. And then I was able to get into the VCDMA program. And after that, I decided to get into game art. And because my younger sister was actually my godmother had pushed her into a fine arts high school, and then on to go to Ringling, which had a really budding video game design program at the time. And I was still like, she's going to school for video games, what? And it still is just like, I didn't see that it was something I could do. And so at one point, my then boyfriend and I packed up our car and we moved out to California. We were like, look, we're going to do something. Like he's going to get into acting. I'm going to get into video games. And we happened to go to a game developers conference in 2014. I talked to people, I showed them my art, I told them my vision and what I wanted to do. And they were just encouraging me. They were just like, yes, you could totally get into this industry. And so I happened to apply to be a quality assurance tester for Respawn at the time, and working on Titanfall 2. And so I was able, and then because of the fact that I had been a volunteer at this conference, they recognized that that I had the drive to go to these conferences, to be a part of the industry. And that actually helped me get hired at the studio. And ever since then, now I've been since 2016, I've been in games. And also, like, now that I'm in it, I'm just inspired to constantly make myself visible, because I don't want to be like a token per se, but I feel like I wouldn't be a token if I had encouraged other people to get into the game industry, or if other people had, to know that somebody needs to see your face, somebody needs to see that you are here in these spaces. And so now anytime we have a panel, interview, like anything going on at any studio, I'm always willing to just like, I want to be out there, because I feel like I would have done this sooner if I had seen myself in these spaces.
Facts. Well said. All right, Talon, I know that you may or may not have a limited battery, so I want you to be able to talk about yourself. Yeah.
Oh wow, I'm in the dark for real.
Special.
I have a lantern. That's how bad my shit is right now. Pardon my French.
Well,
wow, I got that ghoul lighting. Okay.
You still look great, for what it's worth.
For me, it was really different. And mind you, I'm in my mid 40s, and when I was younger, the whole thing about having a creative career was not a thing. You needed to have something practical. So I've always been a writer. always. I used to write poetry, I wrote short stories, but you know, it was that whole thing of you will never find a job doing that. You need to be something practical. You want to be a teacher, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, you like to argue. Didn't want any of that crap. So yeah, I just kind of went, and now I follow my instincts about things and my gut, and sometimes I follow what other people think I should do. And so that's how I ended up in college. But and when I was doing the whole job hunt stuff, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I had good communication skills. So I kept doing more communication stuff. Hated corporate communications, hated sales communications. I do public health communications now. I like doing it to an extent, but I do not like working with these large organizations because their actual motivation is not for the people. It's very much driven by profit and power. So for me, being able to be in geek spaces where I can be very creative, and I love being creative, and but it's not necessarily for a paycheck or anything. So I get to do whatever I want. I'm not actually having to respond to an audience and meet a certain need for anybody.
Yeah.
Became a very big thing for me. And then being able to talk about the social justice issues, which, you know, have always impacted my life, and impacts other people's lives and keeps us from doing the things that actually bring us joy, because we are hardwired to really, I mean, we're trying to survive. That's really what it boils down to. And so much of our lives is trying to survive, you know, white supremacist patriarchal capitalism, that it became important for me to be able to put a voice to that and to do it in the spaces where I want it to be. And I want to be in spaces where I can be creative. And cosplay was a very big space for me. And I was just able to bring my skills into that and be able to kind of, you know, like we try to pretend that we exist in these silos and that, you know, the things we do in one area don't influence others, when really it's all connected. And being able to kind of explore those connections and share it with other people, just that's been the world I'm building for myself. And so I don't really think I necessarily have a place in, you know, geek culture, and I think I'm building a place for myself in that space.
Facts. Facts. Well said. Well said. Thank you for that. Tranquil Ashes. Would you like to tell us about how you traveled the world and did all sorts of wonderful things?
Oh, well, I mean, I don't know. I've always been quite the independent, go where the wind blows type of individual. And I've always kind of been into nerd culture, anime, fantasy, sci-fi, all of the above. I've been into since I was very young, but in terms of doing anything outside of being, you know, a consumer of it, I didn't think about that until after I lived in Japan for a while. And when I was living in Japan, I was teaching, but I had a lot of extra time to like dive into, just have hobbies. And I ended up getting into makeup that way. I started a YouTube channel. I didn't do tutorials or anything. I literally was just on the channel to enter, at the time, other guru makeup artists contests. And I would enter to, you know, hone my skills, try to do certain themes. But the ultimate goal was to build my first kit. So, you know, I entered every contest that I could. I built my first kit from my winnings. And when I got back to the States, people were like, well, clearly this is something more than just something you're doing in your free time. So from there, it started with makeup. And then I was like, well, I'm going to these conventions for fun. Why don't I make my own stuff? And, you know, as a plus size individual, we weren't very highly recognized, and still aren't, in most spaces, not just nerd spaces. So in terms of being able to show that, you know, we're our skills and not what we look like, I'm here to create that kind of space for people who look like me, and networking. And I got to do my first, I guess, event or business. It was called the Cos Gala, where I invited basically anyone who was into art and creativity to a little upscaled urban gala. And networking is the biggest thing, and to be able to show off entertainment based off of people of color and Black people specifically, because there's not a lot of spaces, especially not in the sense of, you know, high dining or, you know, just going to the bar one day that, you know, hosts people of color coming together and networking and really building a place for us. And that's what I'm going to continue doing.
Okay. All right, and last but certainly not least, Regine, please tell us about your a bit more about your story and how you found your place, where that may or may not fit within all the things we talked about with VCDMA.
Well, I've always loved comic books. Comic books are like one of my biggest passions. My second biggest passion is food. So I had studied to be a chef. And I graduated, I got my little degree and all that, got my little bachelor's. But I always had this passion for comics ever since I was a little girl. I come from a very nerdy family. We watched all the cartoons together, all the TV shows together. Greatest American Hero, Spider-Man, The Incredible Hulk. My father would read the Sunday Funnies to me. So it was very much ingrained in me, and writing was very much ingrained in me. I've been writing short stories since I was a little girl, all the way up through high school, and I got scholarships to go to college with that skill. But comics never left me. It was always something that was a part of me. And right when I actually left college, and soon after I became a food service manager, I started my career in comics. I actually was talking to a friend in a comic book shop, and someone overheard me talking about considering getting a second bachelor's. I was thinking about getting my bachelor's in cartooning. And he said, hey, like, I have an independent company, you know, why don't you send me some of the things that you have? And from there, I was with his company for about a year, and I was the managing editor. And I learned all the things to do and not do in comics, essentially. And by the end of that year, it was ready. I was ready to go. I said, I can do this. Like, I can do this for myself. I'm going to figure it out. It's going to be tough, but I'm gonna figure out where it's going to go. And that was 15 years ago. And, you know, I stayed with culinary. I was a food service manager for almost 15 years. But again, the love of comics just stayed with me too. So with that, as it transcends into now, it's my entire life almost. When it comes to women in comics, I was invited to host a panel, a women in comics panel at a show in the Bronx. And after the panel, a lot of the panelists and I, we started talking, and all of us were women of color. And people were really taken aback by the fact that we were women of color. And we were taken aback about how much the audience really appreciated us. So after talking with some of the panelists, we said, why don't we do more things together? Like, it would be like really cool. So from there, we started doing more panel discussions. We started doing workshops. We were doing art shows. And then we collaborated with Bronx Heroes Comic Con and started doing Women in Comics Con. And we were doing that for the past 5 years. We had a 5-year run, and now we're breaking off and doing something new. And I was very passionate about helping women, specifically women of color in comics, because I'm a woman of color. I'm a Black woman. And I really didn't have anybody to hold my hand. And it would have been nice. It really would have been really nice for someone to take me under their wing, a Black woman specifically taking me under their wing, because my journey definitely would have been different. So I want to try to help facilitate that with the Women in Comics Collective International, WINC for short. And we have 150 plus members across the world, and we're growing. And it's very much a community. It's very much a family. We protect each other. We love on each other. That's what we're all about. And we're going to continue to do that. So that's my little story.
I love it. I love it. Thank you all so much. I hope I didn't miss anybody. If I did, please shout out, right? Feel free to shout out. Where am I? Okay, let's pivot a little bit and tell me, some of you guys kind of mentioned this already, but let's talk about your fandoms. And you can be as generic or specific as you like. So talk about like, what are your favorites? You know, what were your favorites then versus now?
Okay.
Yeah, so go for it. I'm so here for this.
All right, so Jim and the Holograms.
Rachel's loving it.
Star Trek,
Okay.
Street Fighter.
Okay. Love it.
Wait, which Star Trek?
I will watch all of them, but my favorites are Next Generation and and Deep Space Nine. Those are my favorites, and I also like the new one that's on CBS. You know, Marvel. Like I started watching X-Men in the 90s, right? I used to get up every morning on Saturday morning and get like a big bowl and like eat cereal on the floor of my brother, and I watched every single episode. Fun nerdy fact, because of the X-Men original cartoon run series, I used to like remember and try to write down all the quotes that Beast used to say. And I found those books on later in life. I know that is such a dweeb thing to say, but it's a lot of literary, he was like quoted a lot of literary quotes from authors.
Yeah.
So that was one of my things. Big Archie fan.
Okay. Archie comics.
Archie comics. Like that was like my
Nice.
book was Archie comics. And I used to also read Felix the Cat. That is so corny.
That's
And, yeah, so those are like some of my earlier fandoms. I was a big fan of Flash. I used to watch like the old shows with my dad. My dad was a really big sci-fi superhero nerd.
Okay.
So like that's how I got into like Star Trek, because he used to watch like Flash Gordon, and I used to watch the Green Hornet with him, and Godzilla and kung fu movies with Bruce Lee. So it's kind of like the inevitable. And then I just, you know, went from that to like writing about it and reporting about it and covering people about it, and like being like an intersection between geekdom, fandom, academia, and creatives.
Love it, love it, love it. All right, I'm like, I don't know who to go first. Talon, you jumped in with the Star Trek, so you got to talk about which Star Trek you like best now.
Okay, my favorite is Next Generation. That has been it, but a lot of that has to do with me bonding with my father. Again, it was a dad thing. My father was very much into all the science fiction stuff. In fact, he's always, anytime we saw something about going to live on another planet or exploring space, he was like, I would be the first one on that ship. And it's so funny because I'm the opposite. I'm like, y'all, that thing was built by what, the lowest bidder? And all you need is one hole in it and you done. I'm good. I'm staying here. I don't care how bad it gets. I'm gonna be on Earth. That said, so that was the big thing with at least Star Trek Next Generation was everything for me. But as far as my fandom, the first thing I got super passionate about was Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And it's so sad to see that Joss Whedon is such a douchebag on every level. But yeah, I was so into it. It was so much a thing. And mind you, again, this is where my age comes in. If you wanted to see that show, you had to be at home on Tuesday night at 8:00 in front of the TV ready to watch it. And my family knew, don't call me, don't come by, don't interrupt me. I'm not answering the phone. I'm gonna be watching Buffy, and that's all there is to it. If you came by my house, you couldn't talk. You had to stay quiet except during commercials. So that actually got me really like interested in Dragon Con. And I was like, but I could dress up. But then I looked at the Buffy characters and I was like, they just wear clothes, man. They're not superheroes. They just wear what I wear, except a little more fashionable and smaller. But I was like, I need to find something else. And once I was at Dragon Con where everybody's dressing up, I was like, I can dress up as whatever I want.
Right.
Bet. then I was suddenly like looking at comic characters and stuff to dress up as. So my first like actual superhero outfit, and it wasn't even a superhero. It was actually, they consider her to be a villain, but not really. Dark Phoenix.
Mm,
And that was from doing one of those online Marvel quizzes. Which Marvel character are you? And
mhm.
once I read her backstory, I was like, yeah, this is me. I identify with this. And since then, it's been no turning back. So if you're gonna look at me for like cosplay stuff, almost all of my cosplay is Marvel characters. I have a few DC because of peer pressure. And,
You
and then I
cosplay
have,
a lot. You cosplay quite a few villains as well.
and see, that's the thing, the villain thing, it depends. Like if it's a female character,
Mhm.
they're not usually villains. They're usually just a woman that they can't control.
Yeah, that's true. Or they're just going, they're just having a moment,
I mean, it's usually that they want to control what they do. They can't, and when they can't, and if
Yeah,
they're more powerful than them, they are like, we gotta take her out.
yeah,
And
facts.
so I was like, I'm kind of into this. But then I also got into doing different types of villains, or because the thing about cosplay, even though I'm a somewhat friendly, kind of open, charismatic person, I really
Mhm,
don't like talking to strangers a whole lot. And I
mhm.
like to limit who's going to approach me. And I found that if I dressed as like really like friendly characters, too many people would talk to me and I would burn out in like 3 hours of the convention. But if you dress like a villain,
Right.
people are a little intimidated and they don't approach you as much, or they approach you with respect. And
Mhm.
so it was a lot easier to manage all of that interaction if I was dressed as a villain. So I kind of leaned into that a bit.
Interesting that people approach villains with respect, huh?
They're yeah, they do actually. They are concerned about how they're going to come across to you, or how you're going to respond a little bit more, because your whole posture, how you carry yourself, is a lot more aggressive.
Mhm.
And so they are a little bit more careful. Whereas when I'm dressed up like Storm, people
Mm.
just come up to me and put their hands on me. And
Mm.
so it's very, very different. And if I don't want to deal with people, I'm like, okay, we're Thanos today. We're gonna
Yeah,
be a Sith Lord, something where nobody's gonna just be like, hey, how's it going? 'Cause I'm a clown.
right.
So it's
That's
great.
that is fair. That is fair. Tranquil, let's do your fandoms, girl. Yes, I know you have many of which.
I do. It's kind of hard to list. Um, I mean, I started out, I guess, like everyone else in general when it comes to anime, with Sailor Moon, who didn't. Um, right, Sailor Moon, a humongous Xena Warrior Princess fan. She pretty much, I still want to be Xena, if that makes any sense. Like, I feel like she is the perfect example of liberation, of power, and get shit done. Excuse my French. Um, let's see. Man, what other fandom? Star Trek as well. Although I would say my favorite is Voyager, because at the time that was what was on TV for me. And so that was my introduction into Star Trek. And so now Voyager is my favorite. So much so that last year I went on a Star Trek cruise for the 25th anniversary of Voyager, and I got to meet the entire cast and crew. And I also got to meet the cast and crew from Deep Space Nine, Next Generation, Disco, Discovery. Pretty much everybody was there. So I had a pretty good time when it came to that. What other more recent stuff, I guess, would be Steven Universe, Game of Thrones. I am a huge Game of Thrones. It's probably my favorite work of like written fiction. Like I can honestly say that.
Yeah.
Let's see, anything else? I'm into so many things, it's hard to like narrow it down. But Game of Thrones, that was a transformative piece of work for me, because like much like other people on the panel, I did used to write a lot. Back in my high school, college days, I was in writing courses. I am published. I don't talk about it, but I am published. I used to write poetry and all of that. But then like I guess it just shifted to the more like physical art like on faces or on like a canvas or something along those lines. But yeah, pretty much all anime, fantasy, and sci-fi. I mean, Lord of the Rings also was a big thing for me. And also the original like X-Men cartoon also, because I would say Marvel, I didn't get into Marvel comics very seriously until I started looking at X-Men. And X-Men is what got me in. I was like, okay, X-Men is like the real world and fantasy. It's like everything that I want in like one package. And the characters were so relatable and so not cookie cutter perfect that you could attach to those characters a little bit more, at least in my opinion. But I could go on for days about my fandom, so I'll stop now.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. I agree. I do think that there are quite a few complexities with Marvel, and a lot of them are like based on real life character, real life figures, right? And we could talk about that more, and of course talk more about social justice and some of the various issues in our society in a little bit. But definitely, that's kind of always something I've loved about Marvel, and it has a different undertone. Marvel's a bit more of a upbeat, where DC is kind of like dark and what's the word? Kind of like grungy almost. So, different strokes for different folks, so to speak. But Regine, I feel like I always go to you last, so I want to not pick you last this time.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I have a good chunk too. A lot of the ladies have already said some of mine, but I might repeat myself. So yes, I'm a Gem fan, absolutely, 100%. X-Men was my mainstream gateway. I collected classic X-Men. I collected Uncanny back in the late 80s, early 90s. I'm dating myself. First started with those. I fell in love with the comic book cards. Oh my God, my comic book card collection is sick. I'm also a video game fan. I used to play competitively when I was way younger, and I love Donkey Kong. I was so
competitive. Competitive what?
I was a competitive video game player when I was from 12 to 14. I used to go and do contests. Huh?
What game?
I used to do Donkey Kong and Street Fighter 2. Yeah, Blockbuster used to have a contest, and my brother would take me from Blockbuster to Blockbuster to play Donkey Kong, and then he would take me from arcade to arcade to play folks in the arcade for Street Fighter 2. I was this little black girl.
Do you ever need like an Akuma standing behind you to
yes.
keep anybody?
I'll call you.
Like you got Akuma right here.
Call you, yes. So yes, big Street Fighter fan, big Metroid fan. Love Metroid, love Samus Aran, love outer space sci-fi period. My favorite in terms of TV shows is Grimm. Like, I'm a Grimm fanatic. I love Grimm. I used to go to every single panel at San Diego Comic-Con. That would be my only indulgence because I'd be so business minded. But I'm like, wait, what day is it? It's Saturday at 1 p.m. I got to get on that line to get in there and see my favorite cast. I love Grimm. I'm trying to think of anything else. I mean, those are my main fandoms. I'll just say that. I'll leave it at that.
Got you. Love it. Everyone's so well-rounded with their fandoms. Last but certainly not least, we have Love Usagi. Talk about what your fandoms is, girl. Obviously, gaming is one, right?
But obviously.
And then, but you got other fandoms too. And you picked up recently, like the K-dramas and such. So I want to...
Yeah, so I'm like, I mean, of course, Usagi is in my name, so I am clearly a fan of Sailor Moon. I've actually had this name since I was in the 7th grade, and somehow, while trying to combine something Sailor Moon, Yahoo spit this out for me, and it was my very first email address. And it has stuck with me ever since. It has become my moniker and my avatar. And again, like many people, I watched Sailor Moon like very early in the morning before I would go to school because it came on weirdly like 4 or 5 a.m. for some ungodly reason. But that's when I got to watch it. And I related to her so much because she was bubbly, yet you know, she was a hero, but she was clumsy as crap. And
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how clumsy I was as a child. Like, it was absurd. And for me to get to see that embodiment in a hero who could still be cool, you know, a chic teenager in the way that she dressed. And it was just like, yes, this is me. I'm so silly. I love to eat. I love to sleep. Like, guys, I take a nap every day at lunch. It was just like, she is me. And so outside of that, then also, like, I guess early in the cable box days, I had early access to like Akira and Princess Mononoke and Ninja Scroll that I saw way too early as a child. And again, it still got me hooked, like getting to go to a Blockbuster. I just watched the Blockbuster thing on Netflix, the documentary, and it was like, yeah, like that's like one of the first places, or a video store, where I got to get a lot of my anime consumption. And getting to like watch Ghost in the Shell, because I was like, who's this naked lady on the box? And it was just like, and the fact that like my parents were like, what is this on this box here? I don't think you should rent that. They were just kind of like, okay, cool, whatever. So yeah, I got a lot of like that early, you know, that 80s, late 80s, early 90s anime, like way young. And then it just blossomed from there. And of course, so I began to draw everything I saw. I began to write my own fan fictions, you know, outside of the stories that I saw. So, but I will say, like, as an anime, Sailor Moon is like my top tier. I don't know why, I just go back to it. I can watch it all the time, like just the original version, but Crystal, not so much. Like,
Yeah.
not so much.
Yeah.
But I am also a very big Star Trek fan. Like everyone has mentioned, I am a huge Star Trek fan. Next Generation is my go-to, primarily because my father is also a fan as well. It was something that we bonded over, and the fact that my parents divorced, and that was part of their like thing. Who gets their box set of TNG?
Stop
So
it.
yes, that was there. I'm like looking around like, me? Who's gonna pick me? Me. But so definitely super fan. And again, it's something that my father and I continue to bond to this day. He loves Discovery right now. He actually got a new doggy and named him Burnham. So he is just like so into it, and it's just something that we constantly go back to. And another reason why I have a love for video games and comics, because he was very much into Batman as I was growing up. And again, I was trying to push Sailor Moon on him to be like, Dad, watch this with me. He's like, no, read this with me. And then we would go back and forth on like who could beat each other, and why I thought that, like, you know, Sailor Moon could wreck Batman with that moon crystal tiara. So it just, you know, it was just something that we would go back through. Even to this day, I'll kind of slip it in. But I'm also very heavy into video games. The Legend of Zelda series is my all-time favorite. The Ocarina of Time is my number one game ever. Like, and besides Breath of the Wild right now is like teeter-totter. It's like either one of those, because it's past and present, so to speak. So it's there's so much nostalgia when I play Breath of the Wild to then go back and want to play Ocarina of Time. And then Prince of Persia, for like a game series, Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time is like one of the top tier video game series in my opinion. I feel like it had such a succinct story that, I mean, it was flawless. And I think too, like the way you got to learn the mechanics throughout the game, the character development between you know, the prince, and just all the characters seem so well fleshed out. And I tried to get my husband to play it because he had never played it, and it killed my PS3. I had my big old fatty for like 8 years and trying to load that game in, and it took me some magic to just get it out. So I would say like Prince of Persia, Zelda, I'm into like Assassin's Creed. That's a really big series for me. Right now I'm pretty much trudging through Valhalla. I don't know what it is, but it's boring, and maybe I just don't care about white people pillaging places. I don't know. So that game right now is it's all right. But yeah, I mean, I love Steven Universe, Avatar series. I know Anita, you know, we all be up in that group. The best of memes. So yeah, like anything Avatar, I am so down to talk about it. I will say that I am a huge Star Wars fan, and I will die on this hill. Mandalorian is trash. That's all I have to say.
Stop it. No, you just unpopular. Look, Rasheen. This is glorious. First of all, you should do reviews. This is awesome. I don't think I've had this type of conversation with you aside from that podcast in a while. And this is just wonderful. I'm just so grateful for this conversation with you all. And Erica, what was the first fandom that you had mentioned? Because that was something that I had never heard before, but it sounds dope. And I want people to check it out.
I said Jim and the Hologram.
Yes, there we go.
But I also forgot to add Zelda.
Look.
So it's a lot of fandoms I forgot, but Zelda is
That's dope. Okay, cool. All right, so moving right along. Hold on. I'm like, do I want to ask this question first? Yes. Yeah, let's do this. Start on the individual level and then we'll go macro from there. What challenges have you had or do you have in this community? Or your occupations, what have you? What challenges are associated with what we would call one would call your social location? So that's essentially your place in, like, your perceived place in society. So like, we're all Black women, but we might have a different location based on complexion, based on religion, based on class, things that, or where we live, right? Like our literal location. So talk a little bit about that. And let me start with Tallin. You still there with us?
Yes, I am. I'll actually even turn on the light again. You see, I'm sitting up here in the dark.
I know this is right in your ballpark.
Well, I mean, it is and it isn't. Okay, yeah, it is.
Right.
Only because, I'm very much into, I've actually never heard it called social location before.
Yeah.
But I always call it social hierarchy.
Until I started working in nonprofit. That was the first time I had heard it myself. So I kind of, But
no, it's a great one. I'm going to adopt it. I love this because I take all this stuff into my office where I work with people who have been Black people. All right. So I work in an agency that is predominantly white. And of course, the higher you go up the ladder, the more it's white men who are running everything. And then the gatekeepers are all the white women who are in the organization. And then other people of color who occupy different spaces. But the ones who you have seen move into more powerful positions, or at least, up higher in the the work hierarchy, are ones who make white people very comfortable. And I'm the opposite of that. I'm the person that comes in and say, oh, I need a bigger chair because I'm fat. And everybody's like, what? No, you're not fat. No, really, I am fat. You can see it. And it's not an insult. So you're telling me what you think about fat, not what I think about fat. So I like being able to just rip all of the niceties off of it, all of the veneers that we place on our prejudices, and kind of force people, I say force, but help people see what they're actually saying, and the types of things that they're actually promoting. And that is what I consider to be my wheelhouse. Like, I'm not revolutionary. I'm not, very extreme. I'm not out here in the streets. I'm not protesting or anything. But what I will do is say, we're not going to bullshit. We're not going to lie. And we're not going to pretend that you're not saying what you're saying. And so for me, it's always been about how do we take the language that we're using and really strip it down to what it is that we really mean, and then just call it what it is. So I do it in geek spaces. I'm like, we're not going to call it these nice terms. We're going to say what it is. We're going to say what it is. And I get a lot of pushback on it, which is fine, because then it helps other people see that the pushback is nonsense and that it's really just about maintaining these social hierarchies. What did you call it again? Because now it's already got in my head.
Social location, I guess.
Social location, yes. And the hardest part for me has constantly been how people refuse to acknowledge that privilege is not just a stagnant thing. It's dynamic. It's constantly shifting depending on who you're in the room with and what, everybody's intersection is in that room. So if you are in a dominant group, so to speak, something that's higher in the social hierarchy, it's very easy for you to start being oppressive to other people. And we see it a lot. One of the ways that we're seeing it now is with, straight people, heterosexual, cisgender people who constantly reinforce that standard of everyone's supposed to be, there is a gender binary. You're supposed to be with somebody of the opposite sex. And that's it. There's no one in between. And so you see Black people doing it, you see Asian people doing it, you see people from all different types of intersections reinforcing that idea. And they think that because they occupy an oppressed identity in a different way, because they are Black, that they can't be the oppressor. But in this area, they're being the oppressor. And so for the most part, what you see is people are willing to fight oppression until it hits their intersection of their identity, where they actually experience privilege. And then they don't want to fight anymore. Then there's no problem with it. And so ripping the veneer off of that has become like my big thing. And one of the areas where I saw it the most was at conventions and in geek spaces, because the geeks were like, no, we created this space because we were bullied and we were picked on and nobody liked what we were doing. And they got into that space and immediately became gatekeepers and oppressors.
No, seriously, immediately recreated. I mean, but no community isn't a vacuum, right? So like, that's no matter where you go. Because I've heard I know people in the bike community, like people who are bikers, so like they got drama. There's drama here, there's drama there, everywhere.
Right. We recreate those hierarchies everywhere that we go. And we don't like to confront the ways that we are opting in to being violent to other people. And so that is, to me, such an important part of the conversation, because like you said, we're not in a vacuum. We don't operate in silos. Everything is connected. And we need to understand where these dynamics are happening and where we're being the ones that are the abusers or the violent ones or the harmful ones, and when we're not, when we're actually vulnerable. And trying to manage that is it's just a huge thing for me. I haven't, even though I've been fat all of my adult life, I didn't talk about being fat for a long time. I was like, oh no, I'm a Black woman, I'm doing this, whatever. And now I'm like, I've ignored that part somewhat, even though I know it has impacted me and made me invisible in certain spheres. I know I'm taking less seriously in a lot of areas. I know that, a lot of men do not actually recognize women unless they find them attractive. And they definitely don't want to respect your autonomy. Like they don't like your autonomy. They don't even want to acknowledge that you have it. And so I didn't realize, and I'm medium brown, so I know that when it comes to colorism, I'm unambiguously Black, but I'm not facing the same types of oppression that very dark-skinned women are facing. So I have to be careful, well, at least cognizant of what I'm doing in these spaces and what I'm saying in these spaces, and when I'm actually being oppressive to other people or reinforcing these ideas. I noticed that when I was organizing an event and I invited all the women artists I knew, and all the women artists that were there on the panel were lighter than me. And I didn't know how that happened. But once I saw it, I said, okay, there's something that's happening in my head that's making me not see, the other brown women who are in these spaces. And so I become very intentional about going directly to those communities of people who are existing at these most oppressed intersections, in these, most oppressed social communities, and being able to, share my platform or provide a platform for them. I don't know if I answered your question. I just started talking.
No, not at all. No, I'm kidding. No, that was beautiful. And yeah, very well said. And I think that, like, to your point, especially the narrative and the fat phobia is to the point where just admitting that you're fat is is seen as a bad thing, right? Like you can't even say, because it's seen as it's not synonymous. It can't be synonymous with being pretty, basically.
Yeah,
you can't even You know?
you just realize that there's so much baggage that people have attached to this word. Like, oh, it means you're lazy. Oh, it means you're dirty. Oh, it means that that you are just this lesser human in some way, that you don't care about yourself, that you're unhealthy. There's just all of these things that are attached to it that are not part of it. And even if you are all of those things, you're still a human being, and you deserve to be respected and treated as a human being. So regardless of what you attach to it, it doesn't mean you get to treat me as less. But you see that people are always looking for ways to figure out what social community do you exist in, and how poorly can I treat you without being punished? And that's a very real thing that we see happening all the time.
Yeah, facts. Wow. Wow. Okay, sorry. I want to move on because I know that we could talk about this all day. Erica, please. I feel like you're the perfect person to pass the baton to. So talk a little bit about your social location and how you know, your challenges in the community that, you know, are affected by that.
Well, I navigate like slightly differently. First, I grew up I'm from Chicago. I was born and raised on the South Side. So, you know, I grew up around Black people, raised by Black people, had all Black teachers, Black everything. So I did not really encounter the level of anti-Blackness I encountered until I like stepped out of that Black as like Chicago space. Um, and fandom and geekdom, it's a little bit different because I'm a journalist. So creators who know who I am treat me a certain way because, you know, they want to get praised, right? So people going to be on their best behavior. Um, Fandoms and like, you know, other people, I guess it depends on who it is. They might look at me as someone who is maybe too influential, but I don't consider myself an influencer at all. Like, not in the least. Like, you would never hear me saying I'm an influencer, you know what I'm saying? But I feel like because of my position as a person of the media, I feel like some fandoms or even people in the community feel like I should not be as visible as I am. And I don't even really think I'm visible, to be honest. I was like thinking about the other day, like I'm pretty invisible. Like no one really knows who I am. But it's kind of like a weird space to be in. I feel like the people who should know me, I guess. And like, I'm not, you know, I don't have like a huge Instagram following or Twitter following, nothing like that. But I think my biggest issue and my biggest problems I've encountered is like men, especially trying to like check me. And it's like always like I encounter men trying to check me, and then like they try to like grill me on information. And then I had one person try to grill me online and had the audacity to link to one of my articles for his defense. I was like, bro,
Wow.
like you're really linking an article I wrote, like, and then but yeah, things like that happen. So it's like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. And then it's like, not only do I know what I'm talking about, I did a whole interview about it. So a lot of bruised egos, and you know, bruised egos to me taste delicious. So, so I decided, me and a couple friends, we decided to create a community online and center women and marginalized people is so much better. Like creating a community for like women and marginalized people, it feels safer.
Yeah.
It's a lot more fun because it's really hard to be in a space where men moderate, create, and dominate. I never feel safe. It doesn't even matter if they're black, white, or whatever the case may be. I just never feel safe because men are going to defend men, and then don't have the same, you know, scope to understand what is and what isn't harmful. Like I feel like men, for the most part, especially straight men, unless something is like hyper violent, they will step in. But like microaggressions and everyday like sexism and misogyny, they kind of like brush it off or tell you that you're being too sensitive and things like that. So I wanted to be part, I wanted to be, see some change that I wanted to be in. So I created a space. We've been doing pretty good and we keep it popping, and this is where I am right now.
Yes. Oh, that's right. Miss My Superheroes Are Black. Okay, let's go. I don't know if anyone's eager to. We have questions from the audience too. I'm really excited, and comments as well. But let's go. Regine, talk about your social location, and also because you have written comics and you also created spaces in the community. So very interested in hearing, and you've been doing this for, no, of course, no offense, but you've been in the game for a while, right? You're like essentially a veteran and someone who I've looked up to since I started, since I like joined the community. So definitely talk a little bit about that.
It's interesting. It's been interesting for sure. Well, yes, I created this community with other women of color specifically, and folks of other genders as well. We created Women in Comics Collective International. And the journey has been a beautiful journey, but it's definitely been arduous because people respect you, they respect the notion of having an organization that's focused on a marginalized gender or several marginalized genders. But they definitely don't want to go along with, let's say, the aspects of considering the fact that these are marginalized folks, or these are marginalized genders, these are people of color, these are Black people. It's like a concept that they think is cool, but then to actually go and support it, to actually be an accomplice as opposed to an ally, that's when the issue comes in. And folks resent that. And when I say folks, a lot of times it is cis men. A lot of times it is cis men. And a lot of times it's cis men in the community.
Yeah.
And again, they like it in theory, they want to support you in theory, but when it actually comes to putting their money where their mouth is, they come up empty. And then the moment that you supposedly do something that isn't in line with what they think is appropriate for you to be doing, all of a sudden somebody want to check you. Ooh. All of a sudden, you're working with folks and you're collaborating with folks, because we collaborate with a lot of people. We collaborate with a lot of people, we work with a lot of people. But the moment that someone feels like you've stepped out of bounds, you've gotten too high on your horse, they try to kick you off of it. And I'm presently experiencing that. And it's and that is a story in and of itself.
Yeah.
And because I'm a Black woman, we find a way to get back up on that horse because there's no other choice. And that's oftentimes why we're prime targets. Like, she's gonna be all right.
Right.
Right. Like, I'm gonna mess with her. I'm a
strong Black woman.
Yes. It's like, I'm gonna mess with her situation, but she's gonna figure it out. Right. And that's how it gets to be tiresome. Yeah. It gets to be really, really tiresome. Yeah. But yes, I'm a Black woman. I'm gonna get up on that horse. But now I'm propelled to now leap over the fences and now leap over the buildings and then, grab my crew. I'm like, we're gonna leap over it too. But why do we have to go through all that?
Yeah.
Like, why is this constant opposition in terms of anti-Blackness, misogyny, misogynoir? It's all these levels. And another thing is that when folks don't want to recognize that in themselves, they don't want to take the time to unravel their privilege. And we as a community, especially Black women and Black marginalized genders, it's something that a lot of us are constantly doing. It's something that we're constantly doing. Talin mentioned something similar. Once you realize that you've been in a position in which you've been oppressive, you know, or possibly just being a part of disparity for other folks, you start to really analyze that within yourself and check yourself. You know, and then hopefully you're with a crew that checks you too, and you check each other, you hold each other accountable. So it's interesting to see how, yes, that there are folks in the community who feel like they're about the mission and who really aren't, and who definitely feel like, and again, I'm talking mainly about cis men and cis of color, that they don't want to take the time to do the deep dive. They don't want to take the time to the deep dive, but they want to appear, they want to present as if they're trying to help you or trying to help the mission. But the moment you do something that they feel is out of pocket, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, I put her on to that. I did this, that, and the third. She didn't know what she was doing, so I gave her this. When did you helping and contributing to the community become, oh, I put her on. Oh, I put her on the hilltop. No, brother.
Men love taking credit for the littlest things. Like, oh, I did this for her. I did this for her. You know, I did this. And I think
You're on mute.
it's easier for men to say they want to support Black women and, you know, marginalized people in the community, but the work they have to unpack to actually support is a whole different story. Like it sounds good to be on your Facebook post or on Twitter or make little Instagram graphics saying protect Black women, but you can't protect Black women if you letting your friends, you know, verbally assault Black women in the community on your page or in your presence. You can't protect Black women if you're stealing content from them. You can't protect Black women if you are stealing their ideas and repurposing it. You can't protect Black women if every time the only Kickstarters you're backing are just men. You know what I'm saying?
I'm preaching tonight.
You can't, it can't be both, you know, it has to be, you know, you have to like really talk your talk, you know, you can't check your friends, you can't check other creators, you know, if you're not willing, the same way with white people, if you're not willing to like put yourself on the line to protect someone who is more oppressed than you, you're not really protecting Black women. And that kind of like leads me into like, you know, if cis Black men or cis men period aren't doing harm, you know, male identified women are doing harm because they will definitely come right behind cis men and continue to carry out whatever their internalized misogyny or patriarchal, you know, agenda is. And then now you are, you know, fighting in community with other women or having battles with other women who are doing the things they're doing to benefit more men. Like they rather, you know, let men kind of like who said the Smurfette syndrome, like want to only be the only woman
or the Highlander syndrome.
Yeah.
Experience too.
That is a very
I experience that all the time.
Yes.
It's a
unfortunately.
Very well
unfortunately.
Said. Right. I'm trying to keep us moving along, but we're running quickly out of time. We can probably stretch it just a little bit if you all would like, but this is a beautiful conversation. We haven't even gotten to Tranquil Ashes and Love Usagi on this question yet, but also while we're in conversation on this, I want to highlight one, the recent hate crime and terrorist attack that happened in Atlanta, and send my condolences to those families and those who were affected. And also, you know, echo and send my condolences to those whose lives have been lost in police brutality. Sandra Bland, Corinne Gaines, Breonna Taylor, you know, and all these various things that have kind of happened, the Capitol insurrection here in DC, just all kinds of crazy stuff that's been going on the behalf of white supremacy and misogyny, that wonderful intersection that we can't seem to avoid. So let's move to Tranquil Ashes. Talk a little bit about your social location. I know you lived in Japan, so you kind of have a little bit of a lens to those experiences and those communities, as well as your personal experience as a Black woman. So please.
Um, well, as many of the panelists have already said, I've had to navigate the world as a plus size woman. And it doesn't matter what color you are, no one messes with plus size people. They all consider us less adequate to do our jobs. However, it was spoken about earlier before about how when you cosplay certain characters, you get different levels of respect. I tend to, and not for the reason, but because I enjoy the characters, I gender bend a lot and I play villains a lot. It helps that I'm like 5'8.5", so I'm not, I can see eye to eye with most of the shorties out there. Um, so, in a lot of ways, I've managed to, how do I say it? I'm a Taurus through and through, and because of that, um, I like to let men know that my dick is as big as theirs, and the contest is not is not going to happen. And because of that, I tend to they back off because
Yeah.
they're more scared of being emasculated than anything else. That's the thing that they're if you could take that away from them, they're not going to in general challenge you. And that's mostly how I kind of keep my footing in this this very cis het ruled environment. And I encourage everyone who's looking, and even on the panel, if you have not seen Moonlight, Moonlight is probably one of the best movies to describe what's happening with like Black men in this current day and age, and why things are the way they are. And I would encourage people to watch that movie because I think it will give other, a perspective of how we got here. And oppression doesn't happen in a vacuum, so we're all victims of this, the systemic oppression that happens to Black people and people of color. And I also echo, stop Asian and Pacific Islander hate. So I definitely want to say that. Go ahead, Talon. You look like you want to say something.
I know. Go ahead, Talon. You got some
well,
things.
it's just that what you said, and I kind of just want to bring this up just because I don't want people to go out and think that this is something where they can actually do that. Let's have a pissing contest. Who's got the bigger dick? Some men respond to that with violence, and I've seen this happen.
Right. And I said that's for me.
And I mean, like you said, like your size, like the fact that you're tall and statuesque kind of puts them off. I have a friend who's 6'2", and I mean, she works out and has a pretty muscular build, still feminine but muscular. And she was met with actual straight up violence where she was playing basketball and she insulted some guy's ego, and he took the ball and full on threw it into the side of her head. And the men who were there, because there was nothing but men there, she's the only woman there, grabbed her and held her and protected him from her. So she's a darker skinned woman. There are other types of dynamics that come into play with your appearance that kind of guide how people are going to respond to, certain types of confrontation that way. So I want people to also be aware of, you gotta be able to read the situation, and that they will, depending on how you are interpreted in that environment, they will respond with violence.
Yeah, that's true. And
I mean, that's true, but I can say that you don't have to act aggressive towards someone for violence to happen to you. It could happen no matter what.
This is true.
But I definitely will say that what I do is for me, because those experiences that I've gone through has given me my education on how to handle myself. So that's how I handle myself in, the social, what did you call it?
In your social location.
My social location. I
feel that.
Definitely going across seas is a completely different experience, being a person of color, because you are more than likely going to be the only person in your sphere, from as far as the eye can see, maybe, of color, in your area. So I've experienced name calling and things of that nature because, you know, I understand a little bit of Japanese. So when I'm specifically targeted out for being a Black person, I can hear that. But, you know, going overseas is real difficult because they do not have the same framework of what we're coming into the country with. That, you know, their reality is not our reality. So a lot of the times I've experienced that, you know, when I do have interactions with folks on, you know, from different countries, a lot of the time it's more curiosity than, oh, I hate Black people, but that's definitely there too. I would just say make sure you highly read and look up where you are planning on going. Research is so important. And honestly, if you can, don't go alone. Always, you know, go in a group of friends who, you know what they're doing as well. You know, it's nothing worse than going anywhere when you have to babysit someone else. So like definitely, you know, do your research when you travel. And you know, my best advice, at least that has worked for me, is I've just done more showing than I can do telling. You know, I put myself in the space to be seen because I know a lot of people have been told that they can't, especially if they're a plus size woman, if they're a Black woman, that they can't do that cosplay, they can't wear that makeup, they can't, you know, audition for that role. And the best way that I know how to do it is to do it and bring as many of my, you know, fellow Black women with me.
Oh.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what's up. And I agree with to like kind of encompass what both of you were saying before I move on to Love Usagi, and we can keep this going as long as you all like, by the way, ladies. But to kind of encompass what you both were saying, like kind of really looking at like your personal social location, like what is my place in the world and how do people see me, but also like where am I in the world and how do these particular people see me, you know, like whether I'm in Japan or whether I'm in Egypt or whether I'm in Philly or Chicago, or at a con, you know, how you conduct yourself might play out differently based on where you are because safety is an issue or it may not be, you know, it is an issue, but it's like a scale, you know what I mean? Where you could like physically get hurt or more than likely get hurt. Cause I've had that happen where people responded to me violently because of, you know, whatever the case may be, you know, variety of reasons, intervening with domestic situations and what have you. So at any rate, but Love Usagi, I want you to talk about it because I know that you and I went to school together at Bowie in Prince George's County, Maryland, which is a predominantly Black county, the most affluent predominantly Black county in the country, or one of the most, I'm not sure which, but you moved to Cali in order to pursue your dreams, and that kind of had its own set of you know, challenges, and also being an HBCU grad, and there's not a strong HBCU network in Cali because there are no HBCUs in Cali. And also working in the gaming industry as a Black woman, where it's like, you know, we're essentially seen as a needle in the haystack, especially when it comes to like working for large corporations and industries. So please, if you don't mind, talk a little bit about your social location.
So I think my social location definitely depends on, you know, where I am, you know, located physically a lot of times too. But then also just even working in the game industry, um, I've had a lot of varied experiences. You know, the game industry is filled with sexism, you know, just violence, disregard for different groups of people. And I will say that I've had some instances at other places and environments that I've been at. But I will say that there's still that like hodgepodge community that is like there to fight for people within the game community. And I think it is like growing day after day after day. And that has kept me in the game industry, where I've seen, especially when it comes to women, just the work that some, studios have, your position or whatever within the company, it can just burn you out. You would just burn out of the industry, not to mention just hostile work environments, discrepancies and pay, things like that. But I will say that I'm very fortunate, and I will think too, like with me being, a woman, a Black woman, and then a Black woman who is of lighter hue, it has helped me in a sense be more welcomed in various spaces. And it took me a long time to recognize that privilege. I, because I've moved around, my parents were military, I've lived in a very almost colorblind community as I thought growing up as a child. So when I came into spaces that were predominantly white or predominantly Black, I began to see those differences that I hadn't been told were there. So that was like a very shocking thing for me. But I would say that my difference in working in just like the public sector, government, has been a lot more hostile than working in the game industry, where I don't know if I'm just more welcome because of I will say that where I work right now, I'm just blessed. I'm just straight up blessed where I work. But being where I was working previously outside of the game industry, I constantly had to think about what I look like, how I sound, am I angry, am I sad? And that was just exhausting. It was an exhausting way to live. I couldn't wear my natural hair. When I worked outside of the game industry and going into the game industry, it was like, strip off everything that you're hiding, in my particular instance too, because I know that it is not the same at various places, various studios in various countries. It's not like that. And I will say that when we mentioned the Highlander effect, I felt that at my studio, because we have now grown a kind of like Black community within my studio, and it has been phenomenal. But initially I have been in spaces, especially in game conferences and things like that, where you get that kind of vibe, like, I'm the Black person here, like, don't take my shine, or, I don't want to talk about being Black within this space. I don't want to be seen as Black. I want to be seen as an American, or as a game developer, or as an artist. And it's like, I don't want to have to turn that off of myself. I don't want to have to not say that. I want to recognize you and see, like, do you recognize me? Are there things that we can come to, talk about or bond over? And once we were able, like, it, because of the events of last year, dealing with, horrific police brutality that was just on stage for everybody to see. So it couldn't just be like something that, again, Black people were gaslit into believing, like, you sure it must have been your issue, it must have been something you said, it must have been something you did all the time. But for it now to be, and going into 2021 with various, again, attacks on the Asian community, where they are considered the model minority in a lot of instances, that they don't get a chance to speak up or talk about the hate crimes and injustices and discriminations that they've faced. But it's like 2020 kind of opened a lot of people's eyes to that. And I think that it gave that, I became more bonded with my fellow Black coworkers after that. Like, we all came together because it was like, we can't hide who we are. And it wasn't even that, it was just more so that when you're in a space that's predominantly white or predominantly male or predominantly female, whatever, you don't want to also seem like you're trying to stand out or only group up with people that look like you, because then you think that, oh, now they're going to point me out for doing that, when you don't point them out for if you see people who are of various groups gathering together and talking. I feel like I only felt like that as a Black person, that I couldn't be seen with too many Black people, or they were going to think it was suspicious, or maybe they're going to be like, you know what, we have too many here, we can knock off a few. But again, because of the community that I had built up, my work, we were able to come out and be more visible, and to talk about the things that had happened, and to share those things. And like, one of my mantras now is just get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's the only way that we are going to grow as a people, is to just get over what we think is, insignificant. Even with being fat, like, to say that I'm a fat person, or to say I'm overweight, like, again, it's all that thing that people are like, no, you're not, no, don't say that. And it's like, why can't we talk about it? And it's more so on the other party, that they're just uncomfortable and they don't want to admit these things.
Right.
And it's just that now it's trying to shake off all of that within the community. So if I am the only Black person in this room, I want to say my piece, and I want you to recognize me as a Black person. I don't want it to be like, oh, you don't have to say that you're Black, you don't have to feel that way. It's like, no, I want to own who I am, and how I look, and what I say, and what I have culturally that may be different, because it may significantly impact our game design going forward, our story going forward, our art going forward, and it would help so much so in any avenue of industry that people would have. And I saw that when I was early on trying to be a cosplayer or even to do art. Like I felt like I couldn't draw Black characters. I felt like I couldn't dress up as I couldn't cosplay as certain people. And I would see it so viciously. Like I was a big Tumblr head. And it was just like, oh, guess this isn't for me. I can't do it. Or, oh, guess I can't, draw Black people because people are going to think it's ugly. They're going to think, why didn't you draw them like this? And it took me a while to just own that I don't care what people say. And that, again, building up a community around me that supported me was the best thing for me, because I can fall into my little hole where I'm just going to be invisible. If I say that I'm Black or, I'm a woman and I see too many people in the space, sometimes I will just kind of fold off into it and wait to see if I can say something. But now I've just kind of thrown that to the wayside. I'm tired of being kind of scared to show who I am. And I think that has been what has helped me now that, I'm still a very minute, I'm a very much a minority within the game industry, but now I'm doing whatever it takes to get my face out there, to get my voice out there, so that people know that women can be in games, Black women especially can be in games, and that our voices can be heard. And to always make sure that I challenge someone. I think that, again, when it comes to hearing somebody say something negative or to brush off a group of people, it's to immediately just call it out. And if I can't do so right then and there, I will either pull somebody aside, I will write them an email, and I will include someone that I feel like is safe and an advocate or an ally for me to help get those points across. Because I mostly have quite a few conversations with my CEO. Anytime, I feel like I want to share something, I have that blessing, like to literally get to do that if I think things need to change, or if I think that there's a problem. And I'm constantly just looking to find more people that can advocate for me, can advocate for other people within our studio, and can advocate for us outside of these spaces. Because again, whenever I think about the violence recently that, just happened in Atlanta, people are like, oh yeah, Black people should come together with Asian people to, form this bond. And it's like, no, this is not our thing. We did not do this to ourselves. Like, this is something where we have to show our oppressors. And as, when we look at the violence committed by white men need to help fix this issue. It's like, we can't fix this. It's too far beyond that, us, building together, yes, we're be there to support and to advocate for each other, but we can't fix this issue. And we have to show that and tell that to people, that it is not our job and it's not our duty to do so. And it's just like right now, that's kind of how I'm feeling. And anytime I get the chance to talk about it and to say, like, what do you want to do? Like, you think that that's the awful situation, but what can you do? Who can you talk to? Can you call out the men in your family? Can you call out the cis men in your family when these situations happen?
Well said. Well said. I'm loving all of this, y'all. Okay, I want
to say one thing.
Yeah, no,
say
your thing.
Quick.
Say your thing.
It's not all. It's not only just cis men. LGBTQ, and everyone has a part to play. Yes, everyone has a part to play. Yeah. You don't get to slide by just because you have a title or an adjective against your name. Yeah. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Yeah, most def. There was something that former President Barack Obama had said, and I know that he's kind of a controversial figure in of himself, right? Depending on who you are. But he said at the opening of the National Museum of African American History and Culture, which opened like right after the election, the 2016 election results, and we found out that Trump was going to be the president. And he said something to the effect of, in the fight for equality, it's very possible to go forward and backwards at the same time. And I think that that's true on like an individual level and on a community level. So just to kind of always be cognizant of, your actions and your place in society, especially because, and not only that, but like ways in which you could perpetuate internalized oppression against your own people, because we can all be guilty of that. Like white supremacist patriarchy is the water that we're swimming in. So it's like, unless you're raised in a family that actively goes against that, you're more than likely complicit in some way. And even then, so, but I want to thank you all. I do want to read some of the feedback from the audience, because they've been watching and they're so, this is like the most engagement that I think I've seen on a virtual panel so far. And it said, someone said, I love to see what it's like at a studio. Can you describe what it's like? And I'm guessing they're talking about the gaming studio, or maybe those who write. I'm not sure what type of studio they're talking about.
I think they might have been talking about the game studio. I think that came up right after I said I worked in games.
Mm-hmm.
I will say working in a studio is amazing. I'm currently working from home, and I do miss that situation. I don't know if I want to go back, but I will say that it's you're just in the most creative space. Like, that is something I miss so much, is that just so many creatives in one space. Usually game studios are ridiculous, statues everywhere, game posters. They have various like tennis foosball tables, game setups for you in those spaces. But I will say there is a caveat to it, because it's like a lot of studios work crazy hours, and I think that there's studios where you can get like breakfast, lunch, dinner fully paid for, and I'm kind of like, man, this is so awesome. But it kind of builds that reality of like, do I need to leave this space? So I think that it's like give and take on what is really good for you when you do work in studio. But I definitely think it's been the most amazing experience. The best place that I've worked has been in a game studio, and currently where I work as well, just because of how much we're afforded, the amount of people, the just differing people that you get to talk to on a daily basis out of so many different vocations. I mean, just being artists, writers, voice actors that come by the studio as well. So it's like you get to meet actors, just talking to different lighting, people who do sound design. And it's just such a hodgepodge of all types of personalities and hobbies. And then as they do their different jobs, that it's kind of like being at a convention every day. Like, honestly, that's how I feel. Like, because I feel like being at conventions is the most magical space. Usually it's just like, man, I don't want to lose that. And like, sometimes when I'm at work, I feel like it's there. Once we get to talking about our different interests, music, movies, anime, and I get that feeling, especially too when we go all out for different things like Halloween, like, it's crazy. So I will say that working at a studio is quite fun, and there are some caveats to it as well, but that aren't so good. But I will say, for the most part, studio life is pretty cool.
That's what's up. That's what's up. All right. I promise I'll wrap this up in a little bit. Somebody wrote, there's one more question I saw. Tall and Kel, how do you feel about the portrayal of Diana in Wonder Woman 1984? In this light of internal biases, hold up, towards HWP women. What is that? I feel like I'm such an old lady.
Acronyms, they be hard.
I know. It felt like she was, quote, respected because she was gorgeous and dressed to the nines with ridiculous heels every day. Whereas this is great. Whereas the justice qualified would be Cheetah wasn't as respected because she wasn't gorgeous. Thoughts on this and how it translates to how women in fandoms. Wow.
That's a thesis right here.
It is such a horrible.
Yeah, I think that's that's very, 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 very layered.
We could all probably write a separate thesis on a single character each in this movie.
Oh my gosh, yes. There's
it's so bad.
Look tall and say it.
Going with the Chris Pratt's character.
That movie was just awful. Just all around, it was terrible. Like I watched it Christmas Day. I was excited too. I'm like, oh, we going to see Wonder Woman 84? Yeah. My husband was like, I'll see you later, and he left. He was not going to watch it with me, and it was a lot. I was actually shocked at how bad it was.
I was.
Yeah, I was shocked as well. I
was
meant
not.
Chris Pine when I said
It's
earlier.
a DC
Yeah.
movie. Like, when have we really?
I mean, but the first one was pretty decent, but it
was.
opened
But you
up
want to know why? You want to know why?
garbage.
It was directed by Patty Jenkins, not written.
This one was too.
Oh.
Yes, but it was
wait.
also written by her.
Yeah.
Oh.
Wonder Woman original was not written by Patty,
Yeah.
and everybody was trying to give this chick all these accolades. I was like, no. She might be able to tell you where the camera should go,
Yeah.
but she
Pump the
needs to
brakes.
leave the writing to
Pump the
somebody
brakes.
else.
The writing was just straight up problematic when it came to Chris Pine's character. Just what was that? That was kind of gross.
It was.
It was
Kinda.
awful. It was
Ooh.
terrible. And like you could just see that there were so many decisions that were made there. Like I would love to know what happened in the background. So there's a couple of things that happen with movies when they're created, right? So, and this happened with Marvel, it's happening with Marvel right now. The properties that did really, really well, especially in like that last phase, were the ones that the studios didn't think were going to do well. So they kind of were just like, we're going to give it to these newbies or whoever and let them do most of it. And they were mostly hands off. And it was the same thing with Wonder Woman. They expected the first Wonder Woman to flop. Like, even though they know people love this character and they were interested, they still kind of expected it to flop. And then when the sequel comes around, after they see, oh my gosh, look at all of this interest in it, then they start putting their hands in it. And everybody has to touch it. And everybody has to try and make it into what they think it's going to be. And you know there had to be fights in the background. And you're not going to hear about it for a while because people get, they will get ostracized in Hollywood if they talk about the problems that they had or something. And so I can't wait till we hear like the truth of what happened there, because I think some serious nonsense happened in the background. And that's how we got this thing that we got with the Wonder Woman sequel.
I didn't actually watch 84. I watched so many reviews on it that I combined it and I saw the whole movie. And that's how I watched Wonder Woman 1984. And because of that, I have so many like background and like, so you know how in the very beginning of the movie you have that beautiful Themyscira scene and they're doing, I was like, okay, what we about to do. And then we get Paul Blart Mall Cop like right afterwards, and it was the studio that told her to pick one. It was Patty who put them both in, and I was like, oh, so the studio actually was telling you good things this time. That was the first thing. And another thing too, along with that Chris Pine thing, I think right now how do I say this without sounding super mean? I do not trust that Wonder Woman can be in a movie without Chris Pine. I do not trust.
It's unfortunate.
That's bold.
No, I think
This
I agree.
actress, this version of Wonder Woman.
That's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say
not Wonder Woman.
Whatever. Yeah.
Just this version
Her.
of Wonder Woman.
Her, for sure.
Her, because to have a whole movie centralized about bringing a character back from the dead, who's like, that was what gave her growth. Like Chris Pine was the one who showed her everything, and
she had like the most minuscule growth of all.
And then you're telling me that after 80 years on the here, the first thing you think about is Chris Pine, not your mom or your Themyscira sister, nobody else.
Not to mention he was possessing somebody else's body.
The way that they wrote her character, even in the first one, none of it made sense. And you could see it. So caveat, full on caveat. I am not a Wonder Woman fan. I'm not a DC fan. I'm not somebody who read the comics or anything along those lines. I am looking at the movies simply as the movies. And when I see, and I didn't actually notice this, and I'll be totally 100%, I didn't realize how much Wonder Woman stayed sexualized as a superhero until I watched Captain Marvel, when they went in the opposite direction and you saw what it was like for them not to sexualize the female hero. And once I had an actual like visible example of, wow, they really like, Captain Marvel was like, we do not care what men think. Like we except for they still cast a thin, blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? But
Yeah, because Gal Gadot, just in her figure, I felt like was just problematic for the character, and then they put her in this
Thank
itty bitty bikini. I was just like, Wonder Woman is built like a
An
truck.
Amazon
Like, come
powerhouse. She's
Like-
the only character that kills her villains. She's the
Exactly.
only smart
That's,
one.
and
Yeah.
that was what was the most problematic thing about 84 for me. It's just like she not going.
No.
She would have snapped necks. Like it would have been.
it wasn't even that though.
Over.
But like in the first one, when it was just like the whole fact that she's kind of following behind him. We all had the no man's land moment, but
Right.
the fact that she was like how thousands of years old and she's following behind this dude and taking his direction and all of this, like, and he was literally like leading her and teaching her about things like she can't read. And
And she
it
doesn't
was so
speak like 100
problematic.
languages.
Yes.
Right. It was so problematic on every level that you could
Yeah.
just see. It was, we couldn't have a character of, an autonomous woman fully out here doing her thing.
Doing her
It had
thing.
to be-
Thank you.
But that's what seems so that's what made it worse about 84, because it was just like,
Yes.
okay, we had that. Like now let her run
Yes.
this movie.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
just
you.
like-
And yeah, Chris Pine in another body who he didn't, where did his conscience go? Hell? Like, where did it
no
go?
idea, right?
Like,
All of that
where
just
did
seems
it go?
super Weird.
And then
It was
not only
bad.
did they take over this man's body, but they lived in this man's house.
House.
Ate his
And
food,
Yes.
nobody
used his
came back
credit
to his
card,
house.
sent to
Nobody
his
called
bed.
him.
all of this. I was like, so he just doesn't have anyone who loves him. So no
Right,
one is
nobody
going to
loves
check
him. He is
what is
truly-
happening to him. And then you see him at the end of the movie and she winks like, and then looks up at a
I
red
used your
balloon,
body, wink.
like she didn't just terrorize this man.
Right, like your body has been used and abused
Yeah.
for my purposes.
It was bad.
It was real
Every
bad.
decision they made on that was bad.
Oh,
But
too
yes,
much
the
Wonder Woman
decisions that they
slander
made
going
about
on.
her.
No, because Wonder Woman as a character is amazing.
fantastic.
And I've
What
read
they
several
did to her.
different Wonder Woman comic books, and then the fact too that she's like technically like Hulk. Like she can just get more powerful.
Mhm.
And it's just-
Like I said, it was one of those things where when I saw something that did it differently, I was like, oh, yeah, they shouldn't have done that. But this is actually very common because we saw it in X-Men. We saw it with Rogue when they sat back and said, we
Rogue,
can't have
Rogue is my
be
favorite
this
X-Men,
super-
and that, like I hate those movies. All of them are.
Yeah,
gross.
and now even with First Class, it was let's take all the
I
powerful
don't
women and make
I don't
them
even acknowledge
children.
First class was
I don't
worse.
even
You know what I'm
acknowledge
saying?
First
First
Class.
class
But they-
was worse.
They killed off my
them
man Darwin.
intentionally.
How can he die?
Yeah. But they de-age the women, specifically so that they will not be the autonomous, powerful people who they have to actually, show them being autonomous and powerful. This is just a very common trope that's in movies in general, and that's because of, white supremacist
Yeah.
patriarchal
I
capitalism.
will say the very first X-Men movie or the first run of X-Men, Rebecca Romaine's Mystique was spot on. I will say that.
Yeah,
Like
that
that
was really good.
spot
Yeah.
Yeah, she was
on.
good. She was
Committed
good.
to the character. Nobody
Everyone else
here. No,
was-
we work out.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what but yes, I'm so glad you brought up. You don't understand how bad or how happy I am that you brought up Wonder Woman 1984 because I have wanted to rag on this movie.
I knew it was the
People who
right
would
question to
listen.
ask.
And it's just
didn't even need
entirely
to.
problematic. Like at
We knew it was
every
bad.
aspect of the movie is problematic, and it doesn't have a cohesive storyline on characters'
It's
actions.
terrible.
Like,
Yeah.
It was awful. Even the bag, I was like, what the hell is that? What are we watching?
yeah, for her to just go on like a murder spree, then it just didn't make any sense.
And y'all better never talk about Black Panther's graphics after that cheetah.
I
You
know.
better
Do you
never
know? It's not even after the
Right.
cheetah though. It was after the
Say
opening
anything
for the
ever
city.
again.
The only thing I will say about Black Panther's graphics is that
Oh,
they
it
got
was
some
great.
trash lighting in the forest at the start of the movie. That's my only thing.
I
It's
will
just
take.
like,
I
who lit
wish
this
that
scene?
cheetah character
But
had
It
trash
was
lighting,
trash
so
lighting.
I didn't have to
So
look
yeah,
and
Y'all
see
telling
it.
me-
because the
Are
whole
you telling me you did
Caroline
not want to
fight.
be an apex predator? We all want to be an apex predator, right?
She
But
could
that
have
looked
turned
like
out
that,
to be a
right?
whale.
Yeah.
A whale is
Apex
an apex
predator.
predator.
I saw that. I was like, who wrote that line? I want to know
It
the
just-
story behind the apex predator line. 'Cause that was
I don't know.
That was
I
terrible.
can't even imagine like who would have said that out their mouth. That's not the
Right.
thing that I think about on today when I'm thinking I'm gonna be a powerful woman. I'm gonna be an apex predator,
Apex
y'all.
predator.
I've never
That is
thought
so
that in my
generic.
life.
How did you even land on Snow Cheetah? How did
I
you
was
even
mad.
get there? Like
No
there's
one wanted
things.
to
But
see
it's just
that.
the fact that y'all actually had a fight without thinking around power lines and water. Who does that?
Also,
bad.
wasn't that mystical armor the armor that like took on like the entirety of like the gods and
It
stuff?
sure
previous?
did, but it got
And
crunched
them
up real
claws
fast.
breathed on
I
that
think
armor, and
we
it
just
fell
don't
apart.
understand what apex predator means, y'all. I think apex
So
predator
Apex,
just
she's
means
above this
something
armor's
so
whole
different,
history.
you know, that it could eat metal or something. I
Or
don't-
something. Or something.
Oh
that was
my God.
nonsense.
Can't even.
It
That
was
movie
so
gave me a
bad.
headache. I had to pause it so many times and just take pace around the room because I was just like, what is happening?
There was even a moment. So there's this moment when she's like using her like little lasso or whatever. We're not talking about the riding lightning thing. I'm not even gonna acknowledge that.
Little lasso.
But the lasso situation. And
Right.
she, you know, she lassos somebody and they're on the ground trying to get out the lasso. How
Yeah.
did it make it in the movie that the dude is twitching, but there's no lasso? They forgot to put the lasso in.
But that's what
So
I
how
like.
you
Right,
get-
the editing and the compositing of that movie was garbage. I mean, but it looked like that from the start. The way it was layered in that video with the mascara, it was just like all of this looks like copy paste, drag and drop into this.
Are we gonna
scene.
get a 4-hour Zack Snyder cut somehow
asked
of
this
Wonder Woman
question?
1984?
I know.
Like, who
gets to
asked
review
this
their movie.
question?
This was on purpose. This was trolling. Can't nobody say nothing good about this movie. Diana
asked
didn't
that?
develop as a character well. Like nobody.
She regressed. That is
She
what
regressed.
regression looks
She
like.
became a codependent brat. Like, oh, I just want this one thing. I just want to have this one person. And it was just like, why is this?
It's bad.
This is.
Oh,
We're
and
all
my
like, we're all
last
like,
thing.
Nubia? Wonder
My
Woman
last thing.
Nubia?
Yeah, I guess
When
you were
she
doing
was
that
in
They're like,
mall.
nah.
And you know how she was throwing her like tiara at the video cameras? How is that supposed to ruin the actual recording?
And how did they not already see it before the shot happened? She was not like pre-gaming the cameras before she threw it.
I
was
don't
bad.
I don't like my intelligence insulted.
Yeah, and it was just the fact that
Such a
this
way.
whole situation happened and we're just gonna pretend like it didn't.
didn't
Like this is not in the history books. Like nobody's gonna reflect on this now.
Yeah.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Invisible jet somehow makes radar not work, because that's not how radar works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. That invisible jet was just the worst.
I'm sorry.
This is how we're
Colin, I
gonna.
got you on that. That's not how radar works.
So the moral to the story is we need more women creators and
Yeah,
We
writers.
also need more women that are willing to say, "Don't do that."
Exactly. There you
And
go.
who know the well, not to say that she doesn't know the lore, but you know, that was something that I also said about like, video games.
That she did.
Like video game movies could be so much better if they had gamers involved in like the writing like someone like you, Tasha, involved in that process. Like I could only imagine like a Street Fighter or a Mortal Kombat. Like
I mean, when they made that Prince of Persia movie and they cast Jake Gyllenhaal, I nearly died.
yeah,
I was just like, I was
let's
just
not talk about Ghost in the Shell.
my soul. Oh, Ghost in the Shell. I can't even. I almost. Nope. Nope.
Ghost in the eggshell. Okay, like no, we're not doing that.
I triggered
can't-
everybody.
I can't even. Nope.
Not doing that.
I almost forgot that. That and that Dragon Ball movie. I
I
was
don't
like,
know that either.
I had went so long.
Y'all
without-
just out here choosing violence tonight. You
I
guys
know.
are
It's
going
just
out on a
like,
good note.
dang.
Like, what are y'all doing?
This is deleted from my memory
Violent.
banks.
No, that Avatar movie was violence.
Oh, yeah.
Violence.
Yeah.
Lord, we could go all night. First of all, this has been an amazing conversation. We did run a little bit over. I want to thank you all so much for your time. Thank you so much, Erica Hardison. I want to shout out her social media as well. She had to run off to do her mommy duties. She's got little itty bitties at home. So, but definitely shout her out. Fabulize Magazine is the name of her magazine. That's Fabulize, Fabulize, at Fabulize Mag on Instagram and Twitter, and then I believe it's fabulizemag.com as well. So make sure y'all check her out and check out her Facebook group. It's pretty much a safe space for Black people. My superheroes are Black. I love that space, so y'all check it out. But I also want to give you guys time to wrap up. I'm sorry for the one or two people I couldn't get to your questions, but we'll definitely have to do this again. And also, before you all shout out your socials, I want to just reiterate the fact that we're having our convention next month, our inaugural event, April 17th through the 24th, HBCU Con 2021. I'm very proud and excited to have all of these wonderful ladies involved in some capacity or another. And just if you would like to register for the event, it's free. Go to, or if you would like to participate, you got a few hours. If you want to be a panelist, you got a few hours left.
Mhm.
And if you would like to be a vendor, you have until March 30th. And I think that's pretty much it. We're having a fashion show, cosplay contest, everything you can pretty much check out on our website, www.hbcucon.org. So without further ado, Love Usagi, why don't you shout out your socials and we'll go from there. Uh-oh, you muted.
Neither.
I should have went with Colin first because she.
That's right. Yes, I am perpetually muted. I go into every Zoom muted because I don't want people to like hear me mess up. But so yeah, I'm Love Usagi on pretty much everything. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LUVUSAGI. Most people think I'm saying I love a USAGI. That's not what I'm saying. That's not. But okay, if you want to. Okay. But yeah, so that is me. You can find me on, multiple platforms. And yeah. And I do art. I'm on Twitch as well as Love Usagi. If you want to watch me game.
Nice with the Twitch. All right, Talon, you take it away because you already unmuted.
Yeah, I'm just rolling with it now. So I'm Talon Kell everywhere with no space. So it's TALYNNKEL. So it's TalonKell.com. I am Talon Kell on Twitter, Talon Kell on Facebook, and Talon Kell on Instagram. What's that? That's all the old people socials, right? That's where I am. I'm also on Twitch, but I have not been streaming. I haven't streamed for like a year because I decided that I needed to have something that was just for me, and gaming is just for me. I can't have an audience like that. But I also have a Patreon where if you want to, like, I actually record an audio podcast now on there twice a month where I'm literally just talking about whatever's in my head.
I love it.
I also have an OnlyFans because I like actually posing and taking pictures of myself in cute wigs and lingerie, and Facebook keeps banning my account every time I put something up. So I have to be so careful on there that I said, we're just gonna open up an OnlyFans, just have it over there, and it's that I don't have to worry about losing Facebook privileges or Instagram privileges. So I'm also Talon Kell on there, and yeah, so that's where you can find me right now.
Awesome. All right. All right, Regine, go for it. Shout yourself out.
Sure. So I'm at Lock It Down, LOCKETT down on Twitter. Also on Instagram, if you want to follow my comic book work, I'm at Lock It Down Official. If you want to just see what I'm doing, how I'm hanging, at RS Lock It Down, also on Instagram. For Women in Comics, you can check us out at Wink NYC, that's WINC NYC, and that's on all the things. You also can check out our websites, www.womenincomicscollective.org, and for my comic book work, www.lockitdown.com.
All right. And last but certainly not least, Tranquil Ashes.
I'm Tranquil Ashes everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, although there is nothing for you to see there. It'll happen, guys. I'm working on that computer. There's a shortage in stuff. Like, I'm working on
video cards.
I can't get one, y'all. And I'm not trying to get a basic one and then have to upgrade in 6 months. I'm not trying to do that. And anywhere else, I'm also on TikTok as Tranquil Ashes, also nothing there. And I'm working on that too.
But it's there.
It's there.
That's all that matters. That's what's up, ladies. I'm so, again, I want to shout out and thank Professor Teodros Makeshua Williams, Chair of the Department of Fine and Performing Arts at Bowie State University, BSU. Right, say it, touch me. And also the creator of the Visual Communication and Digital Media Arts program, which is just a wonderful program. Both the department and the program are working in conjunction with HBCU Con and have been for quite some time. So just really thankful to have our alma mater like supporting HBCU Con, quite frankly. So shout out to him. And don't forget once again to follow us, HBCU Con, hbcucon.org. And we'll see y'all in April. Yay. Bye. All right. Cool. Thanks, y'all. We're done.
Yay.
Yay.
Yay.